Welcome to Spirited Discussion, a Spirit Island podcast. Today, we are talking about two of Captain Planet's elements: the most trans-friendly spirit, a flaming ball of grass, the child of volcano and rampant green, heart of the wildfire. How you doing, Thomas?
Doing pretty well, Alex. And yourself?
I'm doing okay. Wildfire's beating me down a little bit, but I'm doing okay.
Wildfire's special destructive nature can be brutalizing, so I get that.
Yes. So, overview of this spirit. What is its general vibe?
Playing on a knife's edge? That's its vibe.
Yeah, that's fair.
Pushing yourself to the limit? Yeah. What's really going on is you're placing presence to do damage, and by placing a presence to reveal your second fire, you add a blight, and you're always trying to teeter on adding too much blight or remove just enough. That's the balance.
Have you ever wanted a spirit that sometimes placing its presence is much better than any of the cards in its hand?
That's true, yeah.
Have you ever wanted a spirit that, you'll have your friends begging, please do not flip the blight card, please?
Reclaim. Please reclaim. Just reclaim. It's okay. You can reclaim.
Yeah. You sure can. Yeah, so this is a high complexity spirit from the Feather and Flame expansion, which, as we've talked about, is very promo heavy, is a promo, and so therefore all of the spirits kind of lean on interesting gimmicks instead of being, I don't want to say balanced, but, more neutral spirits. And this is one that you're just always teetering on the edge, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game, and the way that it plays at solo through the player counts, 4, 5, 6, is very different. I don't know if you played at a higher player count, but the experience is night and day. Where do you want to start here?
I think the first thing we got to do is break down the spirit into kind of just the elements of generally what this spirit is trying to do. So to start with, I think easy damage is one thing. It has Blazing Presence, which lets you do a damage for each fire you have showing on your tracks when you place presence. That's its special rule, one of them. It has Firestorm, which does a damage for each 2 fire elements you have overall. That's one of its innates. It has Flame's Fury, which is one of its cards that lets you enhance your damage by 1 on every damage-dealing thing you do that turn. And then Flash Fires, which is a 2-cost, 1-damage card that you can potentially do fast if you have 2 air. And then, of course, it also has Asphyxiating Smoke, which can just simply kill a town at slow, another one of its unique cards.
The back of Heart of Wildfire's player board says offense is maxed out.
Yeah.
It does damage.
Mm-hmm. It does so much damage. Oftentimes, you have damage to do, and you don't know where to do it. You can't do it anywhere.
Your base kit is so good at doing damage that it feels bad to get more damage because you just have so much of it. And where you can do damage is only range 0 in a blighted land. It's a really high restriction. Mm-hmm. And you're so good at dealing with those that if you don't cause another blight somewhere by placing presence, you can't even use your damage.
It is very fun to do the high damage that you can do, if there is enough things in that land to do all of that damage to. Like, if you set everything up just right, you either push extra things into your land, or maybe you push your presence, you place your presence in a place, whatever. When you can do, 7, 8, 9 damage, just easy, right? That feels really, really good. But as you mentioned, one of the drawbacks is, for the most part, you have to do it where you are. Asphyxiating Smoke does let you destroy a town at range of 2, but it's 2 from your sacred site, and you're not making that many sacred sites with the spirit.
So that usually means you're starting presence, you're starting sacred site.
Yes, and then Flash Fires is a range of 1, but because it costs 2, that's also kind of an issue. But more on its weakness later. The next thing I think that the spirit really kind of focuses on is just kind of pushing things around. So Blazing Presence, just by placing your presence, lets you push Dahan and beasts out of a land. It's really important to deal with lands that you aren't in by kind of pushing these to areas that have invaders. Also, Threatening Flames lets you push a town or explorer out of one of your lands with Blight per terror level.
Yeah, you're almost like a control spirit in disguise. You Threatening Flames pushes you the things away from your presence, but the cards you're looking for, you really want to push things into your lands.
Yeah.
And a lot of your favorite elements are plant and fire, and a lot of the plant cards have defend. And so you're moving these Dahan around by placing presence and then using these cards that you find to defend.
Yeah.
It's a cool like pattern where defend is one of the better things that Heart of the Wildfire is frequently good at, but they don't have any innately.
Yeah. I will say I am a little bit of a monster when I play this spirit, because even if I don't have the defend, I will push Dahan into lands with with like 2 explorers or a town or a city or something, and just kind of hope the fear or the event cards take care of it.
And you're allowed to do that a little more on Wildfire because they make so much fear, not just through destruction, but their cards themselves. One of them is, 0 energy and could make 4 fear.
How often are you doing that on Threatening Flames? You get the 4 fear if you go to push an explorer or town, but you can't push them to anywhere, or there's nowhere to push them because you can only push them to adjacent lands without your presence.
Yeah, I see this happening on like land 8 and almost exclusively land 8 where you've surrounded it. It's only 3 presence then. And I don't do it very often. It's in matchups where I need that fear, and tough matchups like England. England feels like it's a really hard matchup, and so getting that 4 fear and not having them double build is really nice.
Yeah. Something I did want to, before we kind of move on to fear, I did want to talk about. It's interesting that the spirit, by placing its presence, you can push Dahan, but you don't have to. You can leave any number of them in that land, but you do have to push the beasts out of there. The beasts don't want to be near you. They're smart. They get it.
Well, it's a wildfire is effectively what's happening, and the beasts need to run away. But the Dahan, they know how to control fire.
That's true.
We know what's going on.
That's fair. People can utilize fire. I don't think animals generally can.
Yeah. It's a danger.
So moving on, yeah, I did actually have as another kind of section of this spirit is that it is somewhat of a fear spirit. 3 of the 4 unique cards generate at least 1 fear, and then of course there is that edge case with Threatening Flames. In this case, literally an edge case that you can generally only do it on the edge of the map, where you could get 4 fear. Whoa, 1 card.
Wow, pew 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 pew.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, and I mean I'm sure it also depends on like the shape of your island, right? It can be a shape that there's not as many edges.
When you're playing on a 4-player game, you're looking at land 3s instead. But yeah, it's challenging to do. It's not what I'm looking to do with the card most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm using it as like a pre-defend.
Right. Yeah. Generally, if there's like one, you can kill everything in an area, but there's just like one town straggler. That's generally what you like to use Threatening Flames on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have anything crazy going on with fear, but I mean, 1 fear on Asphyxiating Smoke, 1 fear on Flash Fires, and then of course you get fear just by doing all that damage to towns and cities.
Yep.
And then lastly, there's kind of the miscellaneous aspects of this spirit. There's blight mitigation, right? So the burn land regrows, it's right innate, heals blighted lands, removing 1 or more blight. And then basically destructive nature is a special rule that exists to make the spirit function, because adding blight by powers, special rules, or scenario effects will not destroy Wildfire's presence. Otherwise, it would exist in this bizarre situation where it places its presence and then a blight comes down and then it leaves.
That would be pretty bad.
Yeah. I don't know if we've mentioned it yet, but if you have 2 or more fires uncovered on your presence tracks, you put a blight down where you are, where you put your presence.
And 2 or more fire is coming down eventually. The
Yeah.
first real decision that you have to make as Wildfire is when do you show the second fire?
Yeah. Do you want it on presence placement 2 or presence placement 4?
Yeah. The the land regrows. I find you can get the top threshold where you remove 1 in a land that has 2 or more on like turn 3 pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's basically you get to remove a blight every turn.
If you're good at
Is
the
that
game.
close to accurate for you?
No, not for me. No.
Oh, no.
Well, so we got to talk about the Burnland regrows, and really just the thing with this spirit altogether is that you'll notice that you have to be very careful with what you're doing at all times, because it might sound great, cool, you can remove a blight, but if you remove a blight from one of your lands that has, towns in it still or whatever, then guess what? You can't do Threatening Flames. You can't do Firestorm. Your main ways of dealing with things are going away. Now, you can still place your presence to add a blight back. That is always a thing you can do. It's the situation, kind of the point of the spirit, I guess, is that you are always balancing, like, how much you want to blight, how much you want to heal, how much you want things in your land, things out of your land. It's just this giant balancing act at all times.
From a gameplay perspective, you feel as though you are on the life's edge every single turn. Because you're like, do I cause a blight cascade? Do I reclaim so I don't blight at all? Who's going to be upset at me if I blight cascade followed by blight cascade? But from a lore perspective, Wildfire doesn't really see it as a problem. He said if it were up to Wildfire, he would cause giant firestorms every day of the week, and there would be no issue. Because in his mind, the land regrows anyways. It's not like it's a problem. More than anything, he doesn't do it because the other spirits are like, no, sit down, bad dog.
When I hear Wildfire described to me, I kind of just imagine them as like literally just a sentient fire that wants to hug everything. Like it's going around, it's hugging trees, it's trying to hug Dahan, it's trying to hug like the jaguars that are running away from it. Like it just kind of comes across as one of those like friendly porcupine characters.
Yeah. So blight, like lore wise, is this farming. That's effectively what's happening. And other things are occurring depending on how blight occurs. So, like part of the Wildfire does it by destroying the trees and all the landscape around. The Dahan, whenever they came to the island initially, would blight as well. And over time, they've learned to subside with them. But Wildfire became in love with the Dahan because they would do slash and burn agriculture. And he was like, oh, wow, these guys are great. These are my homies. And so now the invaders have come, and he's like, I don't really care about taking the invaders out as much as just I want to protect the Dahan. They're cool.
Yeah, has a funny way of showing it. Its appreciation for sure. I'm looking at the art right now, and I kind of see like a Joker smile on this thing.
Yeah, that's adorable. I see him as a reindeer hopping around, but he does have that little Joker smile. Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah, we're all one blight away from becoming Wildfire. Shall we talk about turn 1?
Yeah, turn 1's pretty interesting on the spirit.
Oh, it sure is. I think that really, so I've heard you say this to me many times. I don't know if you've said it on the air, but just that turn 1 is like the most important thing and everything flows from that, right?
Yeah, turn 1 is the only turn in the game that's guaranteed to happen. Which means
I guess
that everything cascades from that turn. If you make a good decision here, then you set yourself up to be in a better position later, and it cascades, figuratively, to a better board state.
Right.
And so yes, turn 1's incredibly important.
And it's easier for us to talk about turn 1 than anything else because, for the most part, things are pretty constant.
Yes.
Where the invaders initial explore and which board you're on, right? And I guess what spirit you're playing, right? Those are the things that can change, but yeah. So I think that Wildfire, more than any other spirit that I've played, is just like, yeah, you need to get what you're doing together from early turns, or else you are in for a bad day. You end up in situations where you and Blight are in lands where there are no invaders, and there's just these awful invader pits that you can't even touch, and you can't put your presence in there because you'll Blight Cascade, and then that'll lose the game. And so I find that turn 1 is just very, very important.
Yeah.
For this Spirit especially.
So, because his cards care so much about the map's conditions, range 0, where there's Blight, or they're very costly. They cost 2 or 0. That's a big disparity there.
Mm-hmm.
I find myself playing 0 cards on turn 1, and sometimes 0 cards on turn 2. But you're allowed to do that because placing a presence is it's better than most power cards.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the game, let's talk about it. And in most games, I mean, adversaries aside, one city, one town, and then 2 explorers. And there can be overlap on where the explorers are. There's literally kind of like 3 ways that your start of the game can begin with Wildfire. That is, if you start on board F or D, the town starts in your land with where you and Blight are, which, hey, you can kill that town, and that prevents a lot of things. B, it could be the initial explorer starts in your land, right, where you can kill one explorer without even thinking about it, basically, just by playing a card with a plant. And then you could even place your presence in the other, where the other explorer is, and boom, that first build is not existent.
Yep.
And option 3 is that there is nothing in your lands. There's nothing to start.
So, it's not just your lands. You often want them to explore into the lands where there is a Blight to start the game, so that you can hop into those before you yourself start blighting.
Yeah.
In a one-player game, there's only one land on your board, but then you're trying to hop onto your partner's boards in a 2-player game and 3-player, etc. And that means that you are trying to growth 2 and throw yourself far, looking for more cards. And if you're doing this, you're probably going off the bottom track to be able to, play those cards. But something that's really interesting is pivoting into those second fire to be able to blight. You do more damage, and so it's really tempting. But your growth 3, if you are at 2 revealed fire, is 4 energy, and 4 energy is a lot. And so you could pick up major powers. That's spicy. It's tantalizing. It's something that you can do on a higher player count game because the game has more blight to play with. And so you can, on turn 2, cause a blight, and that's less of an issue. Whereas in a solo game, I don't want to blight on turn 2, 3, 4. In fact, I want to reclaim on turn 4 and then reclaim on turn 5 because blighting is a kind of a hassle.
Yeah. So, to openings, generally what I do is I go for the gain a power card, add a presence at 3, and then I try to get a power card at cost 0, because you have no energy if you do that, and one that preferably does something too. Now, if I can't get that, you can't always get them at 0. One thing to do, absolutely, like you said, is play nothing. Sometimes that is the best thing to do. What you could also do is play Flame's Fury, because even though boosting your damage won't help you unless you start with that town or explorer in your land with Blight, or I guess in the land that has Blight an explorer pops into, it still gets you an energy. And that's something.
That's a sad use of your Flame's Fury, but it's something.
It is, I agree. I'm not saying I love this as an opening, but it is an option for you, especially because the Spirit is very tight on its energy. I think on a better case scenario, you play Flame's Fury, that gives you the plant you need. You've got enough fire to kill a town.
Yeah, especially if you start onto that town, and now you can get rid of you can pocket a corner and prevent them from exploring at all. It feels like a really strong control spirit through damage. So another opening is that you can grow 3, gaining 3 energy, play Asphyxiating Smoke, and wherever they build, you destroy their town, and you've placed your presence where their other explorer was, and so now you've dealt with both of their builds.
Fantastic. I do like it.
This leads you with 1 energy for next turn, and similar spot as a Flame's Fury, but now you have that in your hand.
Yeah, that's fair.
Downside of this is that your flash fires wants to be fast, and your only air in your hand is that asphyxiating smoke, so you've got to find another one. Or, of course, pick up a major power and forget flash fires. I'm not impressed with this card.
I agree with you. It has a utility for sure. There are times that this card will help you a lot because it can reach outside of your zone. But for 2 energy, 1 damage, I don't care if it's fast or not. It's a lot, man. That's a lot.
Yeah. So have you ever looked at this card and compared it to Drywood Explodes and Smoldering Splinters?
I have not.
Okay. So they are almost the same card.
Okay.
That's a minor power that costs 1, same elements on it, and it deals 1 damage for 2 fear, and you can make it fast by paying another energy, so it's 2 energy for 1 damage and 2 fear.
Yeah.
That's
makes sense.
That's the same card.
But that's better. Obviously.
Yeah, the drawback is that you can't target wetlands.
Yeah. But even looking at like flash fires versus asphyxiating smoke, if you play Flame's Fury with flash fires, you can do 2 damage, so you can kill a town. But asphyxiating smoke is better, just because like if that town has extra health, you can kill it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it goes into England pretty well.
And you also don't have to specifically play another card too to get flash fires up to do that. Plus, you get to push a Dahan with smoke. So
you say get to. Yeah. Sometimes it's it's a requirement, and you don't want to.
Yeah, makes sense.
Finding the right
where
land.
There's smoke.
Hey, smoke will kill them. Run away, Dahan. Yeah. I'm helping you.
What do you have a standard favorite opening, or does it really just depend?
It depends so much on the board state. Yeah. It depends on which board I'm on, where they explored, what adversary I'm against.
Who you're playing with.
Yeah.
Who you're playing with. If you get any extra energy or elements, that can really change
if
your
you
gameplay.
Flames Fury, Relentless Gaze of the Sun, that 1 damage, even on turn 1, is actually like +3 damage, maybe +4.
Amazing.
Like, you're destroying a city and a town with this Flames Fury on turn 1, and if you started on the board that has a town in your starting land, you also are... Just kidding, you didn't target yourself. But with Sun, you're doing a lot of damage.
Yeah. There's definitely things that can change, but yeah, I mean, I do kind of feel like there's not a million ways to start this. There's only a few set things you could do, especially when 2 of your cards cost 2 energy.
Yeah, and you start with 0.
Yep, you start with 0 gain, 0 on you, and I mean, I guess unless you want to reclaim right away, there's only really one way to get more energy immediately.
Yeah. I have an affinity towards Growth 2, going onto the bottom, and picking up a power. They have a lot of minor powers that they really, really like. And
hang on, not yet. Don't say it yet.
Don't say
That's later. Okay, but yes, they like them. They do like them.
So I have a strong affinity towards looking at minor powers and doing it early and often.
Okay,
I will
agree with that.
delay Growth 3 until I basically have to. I'm looking for 0 cost, 0 cost, 0 cost, and then it's like, well, I only have flash fires and asphyxiating smoke. Let's cause a blight. Let's get 4 energy, play these cards, and then reclaim next turn.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, let's talk about player scaling, because we've talked this a little bit kind of sporadically, but playing this game solo, playing the Spirit solo versus playing the Spirit with many players, I think does feel differently.
More than most Spirits.
Yeah.
So my favorite player count of Spirit Island, just in general, is 2-player. I like the discussions that occur and how you bounce off each other. And the more players that you add, the More you could do that, but if we're trying to play in 90 minutes, the less that actually happens.
Fair.
But Heart of the Wildfire in a 4-player game, it feels like you could pick up a major genuinely on turn 2, Blight on, or pick up a major on turn 1, Blight on turn 2, and play it.
Yeah.
And in a single-player game, if you're doing that, you're probably going to Blighted Island very quickly, and you can't recover.
I played mostly solo, but a few times with 2 players, and I can imagine how, like, even more than 2 players, just for one, the amount of Blight you have to play with is a big deal. Like, flipping that Blight card can often mean loss in solo, just because of what happens on it. If you don't get enough Blight on there, or if it forces you to place Blight somewhere, or whatever, having more players means more Blight to play with, not necessarily mathematically, but just overall. It also means more people that might be doing things like healing Blight themselves.
Yeah.
That's just for one, for sure. And then also, the spirit, we'll talk about weaknesses in a second, but one of its things is it just doesn't have a lot of energy early on. So someone giving it just a few pieces of energy can really supercharge it.
Mm-hmm. He accepts energy very well. So do you go top or bottom more often than?
Bottom.
Bottom, same.
I basically always go bottom. Yeah.
I think that you can get to like 2 card plays and go top. Because, again, placing that presence is like a power. It's stronger than a significant number of them. But getting card plays to be able to do your innates is really good here.
Yeah, I agree with that. There were times that I would go, bottom 1 and then top 1 and just start blighting immediately. Yeah. I've kind of gone off of that a little bit, but if I am going top track, it's kind of secondarily to going bottom track, just because, getting 2 or 3 card plays, it's not even that you need that many card plays. It really is just about the elements, especially to try to heal the land.
Yeah. More often than not, I find myself getting to 3 card plays, and then the question is, do I place the fire top or bottom? Because getting to 4 card plays is kind of nicer than getting to 1 energy.
Especially because at that point, if you have 2 fire showing, then you're gaining 4 energy just off of your growth 3.
Yeah. And then you reclaim, and it's 1 energy, so it's like 5 energy, 2.5 every other turn.
Yep. The spirit starts out tight on energy. It doesn't end that way, especially if the game goes longer. You get 2 energy plus 1 more for each fire showing, and that could be 6 energy at the end of the game.
It could be. It feels explosive.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like you said, usually that happens either before or after reclaim or whatever, and so then that is that extra energy too.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on player scaling?
The player scaling here is the most notable thing. Is truly how early am I blighting? The more players, the earlier I'm blighting. That's just how it works.
Yeah, and also worth noting that second growth has an add a presence at range 3. If you have a big board, this thing can get to the other side.
Fling yourself across.
That's a pretty big range. It might be the biggest, right? I think
there's a couple of range 4s, but yeah, range 3s.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Lure, for example, is range 4 from an inland.
That's fair. Being someone who plays, usually at max of 2 players, range 4 doesn't mean much to me.
Place your presence where you want.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about weaknesses. I think we've maybe hit on a few.
We have. Energy it's a really big pain point early on, but I think way more than that is range. If you can
range of powers, not range of presence placement.
Exactly. The range 0 on your Firestorm, attached to that blighted land, it's so hard to do because you don't actually want to go into the blighted lands because that causes a cascade. And so if someone can give you range, you can now target those lands without being there and do your Firestorm or your Threatening Flames, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, especially because oftentimes the lands with blight in them are the nastiest lands, right? They're the ones that have been the built up the most. So getting to do Firestorm or even potentially threatening flames, good stuff.
You can even remove the blight at a bigger range.
Ooh, yeah.
You don't have to be there to remove the blight. That means you get to, when someone removes the range, next turn you don't have the range anymore. You are still in the lands with the blight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's one card that actually solves this, both the energy and the range. Okay. And it's super thematic because it's a volcano card. Pop a volcano.
Did we move on to gift guide?
Gift guide.
Okay, all right. It's gift guide time. What? So we talked about some of the weaknesses. I don't even think we hit on all of them.
We didn't. We'll go back to it if you'd like. But there's one card that solves both of the weaknesses that I'm mentioning, and it's Exaltation of Molten Stone. It gives you the range and the energy.
Amazing.
It's really unique in that way, and I think that's a really cool thematic tie-in to the fact that Volcano is, Wildfire's papa.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me more of these weaknesses.
So I don't know if you know this, but this thing places the loss condition of the game all the time. I would say that's a weakness. You're more likely than not to flip the blight card with this spirit. It's hard to avoid, and once you've uncovered that second fire, that's basically it. Barring rare events or I guess maybe a blight card or two or whatever that puts your presence back onto the tracks, you're just blighting from here on out unless you're reclaiming.
I've been in a situation myself where I was in a reclaim loop because placing presence causes the game loss, and I removed a presence, but they added a blight, and they added a blight, and so I just reclaim again, and I hope that I can resolve this soon. I've been there.
That's fair. Another weakness I'd say is that you have to be kind of good at planning to play the spirit. This is kind of an esoteric weakness, but if you do not do the math correctly in terms of putting your presence and doing damage and whatever, you can very easily end up in situations where you put your presence down, put a blight down, do some damage, but not enough to kill everything, and then they ravage there, and then you blight cascade, and congratulations, you've added 2 extra blight when there only needed to be 1.
While every spirit requires a level of prescience, it feels like this one requires it.
Yes. You have to plan. You have to know what you're doing, and obviously you can undo as long as nothing's been revealed, or you could house rule it if you want to just do it anyway. But it's still it's like a bad feeling if you don't plan it properly. There are other spirits that I feel like you still need to plan at high level adversaries, but you can kind of luck into saving yourself with a lucky event or just kind of something good happening. With this spirit, I just feel like if you're not playing at your peak at all times, you're losing with the spirit.
I think I agree completely. There's a lot of spirits where you just say, oh, that's something I can't deal with, and so you don't think about it. And with this one, you place your presence in a land with an explorer, a beast, and a 2 Dahan. And you go, okay, well, the explorer's dead. Let me think on where these Dahan are going. Because there are events that care about you being in lane to the Dahan, so maybe you don't want to move them. There are events that say Dahan defend, so maybe you push them into their demise. There are fear cards that care about where the Dahan are. There are events that care about where the beasts are. All of these things happen before you play your cards.
Yeah.
You placed a presence and these things happened, and you had to think about those, and they're, unknown. That's hard.
I don't know if that's a weakness in player, but I'm okay counting that. It's a high complexity for a reason.
It is high.
Okay. All right. Anything I didn't cover in weaknesses?
No, that's all of them. Its range and energy are really big, and then of course, you can lose.
You can lose. That is true. And I did a whole lot. All right, so gift guide. You mentioned one, but what other cards would be good to use on this spirit? If you want to gain Wildfire's favor, what gifts, boons, etc. should you be presenting this thing with?
Well, if I'm going to mention Volcano, I'm also going to mention green. And a gift of proliferation.
Oh, that's just cheating. That's it. We could do that every week.
We could, but again, parents of the spirit.
Yeah.
But more importantly, gift of proliferation does more for Heart of the Wildfire than most spirits, in that when you place this presence, it does damage.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
When you move your presence, it does damage. Whenever you have a destroyed presence and you re-add it, you do damage.
If you even think about your presence, you do damage.
Oh, that's so true.
You do psychic damage.
Mental damage to your allies.
Yeah. That's not something you're making up, by the way. This is official lore that it's the child of those two spirits.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It is true.
Exaltation of echoed steps. You can push your presence and you can bring something with you. And you're like, okay, come here, beast. And then you immediately push it away because, like, why'd you do this to me?
I liked Embride Behemoth's Exaltation of Grasping Roots on this spirit because it lets you add a wilds to one of your lands. And I find that one of the things with this spirit is that in an ideal world, right, you're placing your presence, adding blight, doing a bunch of damage, solving that land, right, curing everything in that land, and then you want to heal the land of blight.
And then never think about it again.
Exactly. And one way to do that is after you're all done cleaning it up, you just add a little wilds there, and then that should be good for at least a while in the game. Additionally, Gift of Nature's Connection, which is something that I think we used in the game we just recently played.
We did.
You mostly used it on me, who was not playing as Wildfire, but still, it's a good thing for Wildfire to have. Obviously, 2 extra fire can get you pretty far in terms of like several of the things you're trying to do. But also, sometimes you want 2 air because that lets your firestorm happen at any land that you're in with blight. You might want to plant extra plant to make it so that it's 1 damage per fire you have, or to just remove a blight, 1 blight instead of having to remove it in a land with 2 or more. There's plenty of uses for 2 of an element, and then of course as a backup, you could just use the energy. For
2
sure.
energy. Yeah, this spirit cares about their elements more than most, and they only have 2 real elements that they care about: fire and grass or plant. And being able to give 2 plant to the spirit on turn 2, especially, slingshots that firestorm up because you have the fire. That's maybe one of my biggest disappointments with the spirit, is that when you're drafting, you care about grass or plant more than fire because you really want 3 plant.
Yeah, that's true. That matters more. That matters more than 2 extra fire, which is just 1 extra damage for you.
Yeah, whereas 2 extra plant doubles your damage.
Oh, and don't forget about the amazing use case of Gift of Nature's Connection to let flash fires be fast.
Yeah, that is a thing that can be done. Yeah.
Flash fires is certainly forget fodder.
Is. Gift of Nature's Connection also can push you up to that 7 fire for your left innate, your firestorm. Have you ever done that? Have you ever pushed 7 fire?
I did it once, like accidentally. I wasn't even planning on it. I don't know how it happened.
That's cool. I've only done it once to my memory, and it was a really cool play. It ended up destroying like 2 full lands because you can still.
Yep.
Yeah. It does a lot.
Because you add a blight. But granted, always worth noting that you never have to do a step.
Yeah, you can underplay
right? You can always.
it.
Yes. Even if you have the elements, you don't have to actually do that. I'm sure that's a newbie trap. Okay. Let's move on to what cards do you like with the spirit, just to play as the spirit, or has like an interesting interaction?
Okay. There's a lot of them. Lure of the Unknown is probably my first go-to.
Okay.
This is 0 cost, on element. It has that wind, it has that fire, and it has that grass, and it gathers where there's no invaders, and where you're at has no invaders a lot. And
Yep.
it's almost like giving yourself range because you're pulling a town into you. You know, it's like, oh, I'll just take this and eat you up.
In a similar vein, Gold's Allure as well. If you are in a place in a mountain specifically.
Sear Anger into the wild lands is really cool. I love Badlands and comboing that with Hazard Spread. And so now we have 2 0-cost fire plants that are just adding 2 Badlands a turn. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah, the spirit does like Badlands.
If you are paired with a spirit that can like move things a lot, like a finder or a river, they can continuously feed your Badland. Yeah,
That's nice.
love doing that.
On the topic of Badlands, there's the major power Spill Bitterness on into the Earth, which is it is range 0, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but 6 damage, add 2 Badlands / Strife and a Blight, and then in up to 3 adjacent lands with Blight, add a Badlands / Strife. Thresholded, it's in up to 3 adjacent lands, 1 damage to each invader. Now, it does add Blight, which is an iffy. It's a controversial topic with this spirit. Do you want things that add more Blight? And the answer is probably no, but if you can fully take advantage of it, right, in this situation, maybe you do want a Blight, because maybe you've healed it out of somewhere where you are, and adding the 1 is good, and then you might be surrounded by places with Blight, and just adding Badlands into a bunch of different places is pretty good.
If you can threshold it, which getting 3 water is very difficult, but if you can, it's like wiping several lands out.
It's not the best card for the spirit by any means, but I just thought it's an interesting one. It's a finisher.
Yeah.
You know, if you could take this and finish things, then that's where you want to be.
Finish them. I think my favorite major is the Wounded Wild's turn on its assailants.
Okay.
It has range of 1 in a blighted land, and you do so many things, but the TLDR is you destroy the land. And back to that range issue. Whenever you get to look at a land that has blight, and you say, I don't want to go into there, but this card wipes it out, that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think another thing, we kind of mentioned it, but any defend card that has range to it, and especially range that isn't tied to a sacred site, is generally pretty good for this spirit. You know, looking at like Entrancing Apparitions, Dark Entangled Woods, stuff like that. Even what's the one? Oh yeah, even Sap the Strength of Multitudes, which generally has range 0, but with only 1 air, you get to increase the range to 1. Those are ones that you definitely want to be protecting lands that you're not in. Ones that have Sacred Zone range can still be good, but like it depends on how big the board is and where that sacred site is. Because you're not making that many sacred sites. You can, but you generally have to heal the land first, because placing down 2 blight when you place a presence is like not great.
That's twice as
not
many.
great at all. Yeah, it really is.
I think Carapace Land is really cool. The 0-cost one, and it's range 1 if you target a land with a beast, but you get to move beasts, and it's more of that foresight, you know?
Oh yeah, that planning thing. Yeah, pretty cool.
A significant number of plant cards have defend on them, and being able to move the Dahan and defend is a really strong combo. So I love being able to do that.
Yeah. And special shout out to the handful of cards that actually like push blight around. In a lot of situations, these cards aren't great. Like, obviously, if you're preventing a cascade, that's fine, but if you could just defend the land, that would probably be better. But with this specific spirit, especially if you haven't had your second fire revealed yet, you can push blight into where you want to be, pop your presence down, and then bam, you didn't actually blight the land, but you could still do stuff there with your abilities. Like Entrap the Forces of Corruption is one.
Sky's Herald, a season return, lets you place your destroyed presence and then push that blight that you just placed.
Yep.
You might want it where you're at, though. The one that I really
Yeah.
like is Like Calls to Like, where you
Yeah.
gather everything into your land. Ooh, we're gonna make some people explode.
Mm-hmm.
But no
Yeah.
cities, sadly.
Aw. Um. Yeah, really. I mean, a lot of stuff that kind of messes with blight is can be good with the spirit. Um, I'm trying to look at like there's a few cards that do 1 damage per blight, and if you can kind of push well enough, or if things have gone bad and there's just lots of cascades, that might be good for you.
Yeah,
Like Purifying Flame is 1 damage per blight. If lands, mountain, or sands, you may instead remove 1 blight. That card's not bad, and it's fire, air, plant.
it does what you're looking for, like most of the time for the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you can grab one of these blight removing cards, like Teeming Rivers or
Yep.
Absorb Corruption.
Cycles of Time and Tide.
Yeah, Renewing Rain. All these remove
Yep.
blight, and now you're removing 2 a turn, and you could actually accept a blight cascade if you needed to, or if you really got the burned land regrows to get 5 fire and the 2 earth. Now you're removing like 3 a turn.
Mm-hmm.
And you're no longer worried about your loss condition. It does take picking up a couple of cards that are removing things, but I prefer to lean into the blight rather than removing it. And Purifying Flame, I like that a little more.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to a new segment I like to call "This Will Lose You the Game." So this is about just something that can happen in the game that maybe you don't know about the rules, like the specific rules connotations of, or you think it works one way and it works another, or whatever, or just something that you just generally don't want to be doing with this spirit. And I have a little story. So I was playing solo, and I was in a very tight spot in terms of blight, as you very often are with this spirit, and I had picked up Weave Together, the Fabric of Place. And this is a card that turns 2 lands into 1 land. And what it means is that if you have if you have the coastal card come up for Ravage, right? And there was going to be 2 separate Ravages, then you can weave together and make it so that only 1 land is ravaging instead of 2. And then I guess the 3rd land might still ravage, or maybe it's empty. I don't know. Well, I played this card. I had enough energy to use it, and I thought it was real clever because I'm like, cool, I'm going to survive another turn because I had 1 blight left after all was said and done at the end of turn. And as it turns out, when you separate your presence from the blight, or you pick which land your presence is going into, it counts as moving your presence, and a blight gets placed, and you lose.
That's a story. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, Weave Together certainly can have its applications with this spirit. I'm not saying, like, never take that card.
Yeah.
But just know that if your presence is there, at the end of that turn, you're blighting.
Also know that you're doing damage.
Yeah.
Moving your presence can be a big boon, but it's just as much of a bane if you're on the knife's edge, and you, especially solo, are always on the edge.
Yeah, this is one of those rare spirits that Unrelenting Growth is not just an auto pickup. Sometimes you might still want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You place your presence down, do damage, defend away, fine. But there are times when the blight is really low that you don't want this. You don't want placing more presence, and that's crazy because most of the almost basically every other spirit in the game would love Unrelenting Growth.
It's on element. You could target other spirits with it.
You could house rule and say that the defend 20 defends from you as well. Okay.
So, if that's losing the game, there are some blighted island effects that are losing the game too.
Oh yeah.
One of them makes you proliferates you, and normally that's like a big boon. And this one's like, no, please don't. No, I'm going blighted, and now it's just getting worse.
Yep. Yeah, there's some real crummy situations that would ordinarily be great for other spirits.
Yeah.
Not this one.
So all things weaken. This happened to me recently.
Ugh.
Oof. Uh, you're blighting a lot, and so normally you don't want to place onto your friend's presence. It'll destroy that. But with all things weaken, it's like, no, no, just like stay away, man. Get away from me. Don't even come close. Stop thinking about it.
Uh,
But you do destroy things even better.
yeah, if I could tweak one little thing about the spirit, I think I would like it to be maybe like, I don't know, immune from presence destruction events or so, like some extra immunity. Just because sometimes it feels really dirty to get your presence destroyed as the spirit, as if you're not doing well, and then you just can't place anymore because there's so much blight, and it's a nasty feedback loop.
Like dark fire.
Yeah, is that a thing?
Yeah, dark fire for shadow flicker like flame. It says the first time that an action would destroy under your presence, you can push one of those instead.
Oh. Oh no, not that rule on this spirit. No, thank you. No. We don't need to be pushing.
Okay, but you could imagine a caveat where it's like, oh, your presence got destroyed, push it, but don't do the damage and blight.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I feel like the moving of your blight or the moving of your presence adding blight is definitely a gotcha. If you don't read that carefully, I could very easily see people just playing that incorrectly because it's not that often that you're kind of pushing your presence around unless you're one of those spirits. You know?
It's an infrequent effect. It's really cool though because early on, movement is like for long-term success, you need this range, or it comes with a benefit. Hey, you get to bring something with you. With this spirit, movement translates to damage, and if a spirit lets you move your presence on turn 1 or 2, you're turning that movement into damage, and that's empowering. That's a benefit.
Oh yeah. If you don't have 2 fires revealed, that's fantastic. That's amazing.
And that's when the movement comes into play the most anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Moving right along here, let's talk about adversaries or scenarios that this thing has some interesting interactions with.
Okay. Yeah, the first one is HME. I think is pretty interesting. It has healthy towns, right? They have 4 health.
Yep.
But if you place your presence there and you blight, and you deal 2 damage to a town, well, they're no longer healthy because you blighted. You just kill the town.
Yeah, but I don't like HME pulling in.
I said HME. Habsburg mining.
Oh, the mining one. Okay. Yes. Sorry. The regular monarchy being able to pull towns into lands that you've already cleared is no bueno. Don't like that.
Yeah. The thing that feels impossible is England.
Yeah.
I don't know if you banged your head up against a wall versus them, but
Oh, I did. Yeah.
That's what it felt like, right? You're just like
Yeah.
over and over and over. It's so hard to deal with.
You're playing whack-a-mole. That like just a never-ending game of whack-a-mole, and then you lose.
And as much damage as you have, like that extra health is so brutal.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, really, any adversary that adds either pushes or builds or whatever in lands that you've cleared. Scotland has a tiny bit of this too, but only on the coast. Anything like that is just nasty because you want to be healing the lands at a certain point, right? You want to be able to to put some blight back so that you can then place more presence and blight more other areas. You don't want to just say, all right, well, I guess I'm going to leave the blight there. Have you ever thresholded your right innate and then chosen not to heal the land?
I have, and I hate it. You stare at the board and you're like, there's 3 lands I could target, and it would be a mistake.
Yeah. I what I hate the most, one of the things that really drives me nuts is when I threshold the first tier of it, when I threshold the second tier of it, where you can remove 1 blight from anywhere that you are, And I'm looking at the board, and I'm like, the best thing for me to do is remove one of the blight in the land that I'm at, that I started in, because there's 2 blight there, but there's already 2 blight there, and what if next turn I can't hit that second threshold?
Yeah.
Should I just remove a blight from somewhere else? And then it can be infuriating.
I think about that almost every time you get to, like, you get an early threshold, and you're like, wow, do I remove one of these miscellaneous ones in case if I can't do it again? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's real. One thing I can say is that this spirit is in a lot of ways the anti-France. France is an annoying adversary that wants you to not have too many towns on the board, and guess what? Doing a bunch of damage and having a card that just explicitly destroys towns is great at dealing with that.
Yeah, their biggest challenge, I think, is their level 5.
Correct, yeah. When you remove Blight from the board, it goes there instead of the Blight card, and then as soon as you have 3 there, you put it back to the Blight card. But at least, I will say, at least that interacts in an interesting way with the spirit, that you are still healing, you just have to do it.
You just have to go to Blighted Island first.
Yeah, basically. Basically.
I played a France game recently, and this effect so rarely comes into play. My buddy... We got 3 blight over there, and he's like, all right, time to put it back onto the blight card. And I was like, no. It says per player. We keep going.
That hurts. But another thing with France, another nice thing is that this spirit allows you to set up the slave rebellion incredibly well, because you're constantly pushing Dahan around. And you can even push towns around with, out of your land with that one card.
The one card.
That one, Threatening Flames.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
it's really easy. The thing that you're lacking would be the Strife, but Fire in the Sky is a card I'm pretty excited to take. And alongside, you have to convince me not to take Hazard Spread. And so now you get to take Hazard Spread plus Fire in the Sky, and you get to combo those together. That's a pretty cool, unique interaction against France while playing Wildfire.
Yeah. And also, we mentioned Sacred Zones can be an issue with the spirit, but Sacred Zone plus range of 2 on is not a problem at all, because you do start with a stack of 3 that even if one gets destroyed, it's still a Sacred Zone. So as long as you have Sacred Zone plus range, it's not a problem, and Hazards is fine for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this spirit versus Brandenburg Prussia?
Oh, crushes it. It's easiest matchup.
Yeah. Because one of the things that you that you can do with this spirit, either solo or I guess at 2 or above, is pocket. As we mentioned like a lot earlier.
Yep.
You can pocket and push things towards the coasts. So Brandenburg Prussia, it does a lot of things. It makes things go a lot faster. But the only extra buildings it places are one at the very start of the game, and then on the coast, and then during the escalation, which is only a few times, so you don't have a ton of extra plastic to deal with like you do with the other ones. So it's easier in that matchup to pocket than really any other.
Yeah, you end up taking a blight on the coast early on, and their inland is just gone, and it'll never come back.
Yeah, and that's satisfying. That's one of the satisfying things you can do with this spirit, especially if you start on the board that has the blight or has the town in your land. It's just very easy to just say, bye town, okay, land date's fine, goodbye.
They don't have any persisting builds. If you clear a land, it's just done. You move on. It feels great. In the same way, Sweden does that too, and they are easy enough to say, oh, you're about to ravage there. What if I just Blight Cascade myself? And now you don't add that town, and it was going to Blight Cascade anyways, but now you don't add that town, and you've pocketed against Sweden.
Yeah, might even strip mine Cascade, so you might still be up 1 Blight.
Exactly. You've saved yourself a Blight and a town, and Sweden is really, really easy to deal with solo. But with more players, it can kind of get out of hand if not everyone is taking out. Like, if one Ravage occurs, it can be rough.
Mm-hmm.
But you're so good at dealing with one land's build and then just wiping the other one.
Mm-hmm. And also, perhaps along the way, you or some other spirit has picked up more blight healing things just in preparation for Sweden, and then cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Have you ever played any scenarios with this spirit?
Have I played any scenarios? I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if you have, you don't remember them, so
Yeah.
it's not worth bringing up, I guess.
No.
Do you think this would be a fun one to do a diversity of spirits with? You can't communicate with your friends about how much blight's coming down or anything. You just you just let it be a fun surprise.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
Okay.
Uh,
Interesting.
I think that Elemental Invocation would be a good time.
Okay.
It means that you, can, especially if you're playing with spirits that use same elements, you can kind of just take any card you want and do cool stuff. Because you don't need that many elements. Especially plant, you get those 3 plants and you're like, yeah, I'm good now.
Yeah. Interestingly, the spirit board actually mentions scenarios. Scenario-based rituals, in fact. They don't destroy your presence. Isn't that great? I don't know which scenario-based ritual. Which one is that?
Rituals
that does that?
of Destroying Flame.
Okay.
Does it, you have to, destroy a presence, pay some energy, and you make a marker that does something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a scenario I'd played once and I didn't care for it too much, so I haven't gone back to it.
Mm-hmm. I see, because you add a flame marker and 1 blight to the land. And this destroys presence normally, but not for this spirit. So take that. I don't know why that is specifically excluded, but okay, sure.
It's not an
Why
adversary. Not? Don't worry about it.
Okay. So blight event fear cards interactions. I mentioned it earlier, but there are rare events that let you put your presence back on your track, and for most spirits, this is like an awful thing to do, because you're just like losing out on card plays or energy, but for this spirit, if things are in a tight spot, yeah, sure, cover that fire back on up. You don't need that. Extinguish them flames.
Extinguish the flames.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a cheeky play. I've never done that.
Something else definitely worth noting is that events that add more blight to the island are awful on this spirit. Just awful, especially the ones that you have no control over. And, might I add, events and blight cards and just anything else that gives you that option of, destroy your presence or add a blight. Yeah, that sucks for this spirit, because this spirit doesn't generally have a ton of presence on the island.
Yeah, you care about your presence more than most spirits, and you really don't want to place more blight. Most of these effects are on the blighted island side of the event, and you're going there faster than most. So it's kind of a double whammy where you don't want it and you're the one making it happen.
Yeah, there is ways that this game can you just lose. Ordinarily, I think this game is generally very fair and very in your control, but I do think that you can get hit with like 3 cards in a row that force you to place blight, or force you to place blight and destroy presence or whatever, and it just, what do you do? What do you do?
Well, that's easy. You just cry.
Oh, okay. You just play better, I guess. RNG better.
If you lose to RNG, it's just a skill issue, okay? I don't know.
Oh boy. I have not tried it. But I would say maybe this is the good argument for playing without events for this one spirit that eliminates some frustration from the spirit. So
I've never
maybe
done
Command
it.
Beast would be, yeah.
Especially with that beast movement that you have. I keep going back to that, but it's so much like RNG associated with that, and you're kind of banking on just like a lucky thing happening. Because it's not like there's 100 beasts on the board. It's usually just one, and you're kind of moving it around as you please.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
having control of when it does something, if it does something, is valuable.
You generally don't want to see any blight card that has very few blight on it per player.
Yeah. But I like them.
In fact, in solo, you are legally allowed to replace them, and I always do. It's a good idea. I mean, with this spirit in particular, not just with any spirit.
But you get benefits. I love benefits.
Yeah, and then you get the event card that adds a blight and sad times.
Just don't do that. It's easy.
Oh, okay. Any other interactions? Anything with fear cards?
No. Nothing that comes to my mind. Nothing that stands out is like, oh wow, that's a really, really cool combo.
I mean, your ability to push the Dahan around, as I mentioned, I'm an evil person for pushing the Dahan just into harm's way in the vague hopes that a fear card or an event will save me. So
fear card, you're our only hope.
So okay. How about some fun spirit combos with this one? Who else? Who would you recommend to play as if someone in your group is a big wildfire fiend?
Sun. Being able to give Sun +1 damage, a Badlands attached to them feels really good.
Okay.
Vengeance is a cool combo because you both just spiral out of control, and either you win and it looks terrible, or you lose and it looks the same.
Can't it also use Blight as Badlands?
Yes. Yep.
That's nice.
So both ways, we're kind of just facilitating some Badland users.
Nice.
Volcano is a pretty fun combo to do this with. It's more than anything, I see that exaltation that Volcano gives you, but Volcano just deals with its area so well, and you can deal with your areas, and then you just pick up the spots that were bad using his exaltation, and it's pretty fun.
We just played before this episode a game where I was Ocean and you were Wildfire, and I found it to be pretty pleasant. It's a similar situation where Wildfire is just good at taking care of its own areas, so as long as Wildfire kind of gets to the far corners and then lets Ocean do the rest, that's not bad.
Something that's really neat with Ocean is, especially at like tier level 2, your threatening flames can push 2 towns into the ocean.
Ooh. Oh, that's spicy. That's some juicy stuff.
It's cute, right?
Yeah.
But Ocean is so good at dealing with the coast. You want to have more players in the game so that Ocean struggles to deal with all 9 lands or all 12 lands. Like, no, let me push things into the ocean for you. Let me help you. There's the opposite, though. I think Serpent Slumbering really... So they came out together in Promo Pack 1, and they don't work well together. Serpent really doesn't want blighted lands, and Heart of the Wildfire likes to have those elements, but it doesn't want to give up like too much of its presence. It's happy to give up that first one, especially because you have a 3 single land, but it's a question of like, which one do I give you next? Which one could I give you next?
So maybe in a larger game it would be fine.
Yeah.
But not at 2 or maybe 3 players.
Yeah. And same thing for Sharp Fangs, where they need to target those non-blighted lands. Like, oh no. No, honey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. I mean, there is some level of, okay, well, Wildfire takes care of the blighted lands so that Fangs doesn't have to go near it, but it's not great, and I feel like also just it's redundant a little bit with Wildfire, because it's like, okay, Wildfire can push beasts, but you don't need to be doing that. Like, yeah. But there's a lot of things that do work with it. Really, as you mentioned, push spirits also are pretty decent with it.
I love myself a finder. You get yourself like a good spot, and finder goes into your land, just shoves everything into it, and you're like, ooh, I'm eating well tonight.
All right, so it is time. Since we have increased the runtime of our episodes, we've decided in spirit reviews we may cover aspects. Ooh.
Transform?
Should we cover? Should we cover it?
I think we should.
All right. Transforming Wildfire. It is an aspect from Nature Incarnate, and it lives up to its name. It transforms a lot about this spirit.
It does. It feels like a completely different spirit. Transform? Oh man. Okay, let me tell you what this does. So when your actions would destroy a city, you get 2 fear, and you replace it with a town and explorer, and you push them out. And when you destroy a town, instead, you get a fear, and you replace it with 2 explorers, and you push them out. This makes it so that your board looks like it's always full of stuff. But then you have this really cool exaltation, where you and another spirit, assuming you have full thresholds, can forget a power, so get another power, and you both gain any element. You can pay an energy to replace a blight with a Badlands, and you and the spirit that you target can replace an explorer with a beast in one of your lands. This is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, this is insane that it does this. And then, of course, this only replaces the Burn Land Regrows, which is probably your most straightforward ability of the spirit.
Yeah.
Just the blight healing innate. So it's don't think you're replacing any of your special rules or anything weird. Like you're keeping that. You're still blighting everywhere. You're still doing damage based upon how much fire you have. You're still doing all of that stuff. But then on top of that, this is a special rule and another innate that is much more complicated than the innate it's replacing.
This innate shifts the way you play so much, though.
Yes.
It says complexity up on this. I think that this is so true in that previously you were a high complexity spirit. I think this pushes you happily into the very high complexity, and it's more complex than Starlight, at least.
Oh, 100%, for sure. That's the thing, is that I feel like you could hand a new player Starlight, and they can win the game at lower difficulties. Whereas if you hand a new player Wildfire, even base Wildfire, I think, but Wildfire or Transforming Wildfire, they might win, but they're probably just going to lose horribly.
Yeah. There's so many things that are going to punish them.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Transforming, so I unfortunately only got a few games in with this, but I gotta say, I did like it more than base Wildfire. And one of the big things is, so it's rule about how cities then turn into a town and an explorer and get pushed, and then towns turn into 2 explorers and get pushed. It is technically a negative thing for you, but from a kind of like a fun perspective, it helps you always have something to do with all of your extra damage. A lot of times, base Wildfire, we talked about this, you have a lot more damage to do between placing your presence, between your left innate, between flash fires and all that stuff. You have more to do than you can really. There's enough explorers to do it to in your lands.
Yeah.
With this aspect, you're taking a town and then turning it into, or you're taking a city and turning it into a town and explorer, and then you can very easily push those just right on into your lands.
If
and
you have 2 adjacent next to each other, heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, or push them into a land that you know you're going to grow into next turn. Like, that feels good. And I guess in some ways it might be an upgrade because you are, instead of just getting the 2 fear from a city, you're getting 2 fear from the city still, replace it with a town and explorer, and then 1 fear the next time when you kill that town. So again, it's complicated. It is definitely more complicated.
It is,
but I think it's more fun to be able to do this sort of thing, and it really turns the dial up on the control part of this spirit.
So not only is the control dial way up, but there are times where I have gone out of my way to turn the offense, the damage, way down. Why transform rather than consume when you could just not? You don't have to. You could choose to not destroy things.
And it's worth noting that if you just defend and let the Dahan take care of it, they just kill it.
Yes.
They don't care about your special rules.
And you're still good at moving Dahan, and you still like defending. Something that this does, though, is it pushes you into fire more than the grass. Because getting that top innate, that 4 fire, 1 grass, That means you really care about that 4 fire. You get
Mm-hmm.
that in any element, and that lets you trigger the next 2. Or if you're short on grass, you get another grass and you can do your firestorm at a higher quality. You're looking for this first threshold, and you have cards you're happy to get rid of. We've talked about those, right? We don't want to play flash fires. Asphyxiating smoke costs 2. We don't really want to play it. And there are times where you kind of like only play 2 cards and you try to go to the casino. You know, you loop these cards. You forget a card that you played and you find another one, and the next turn you G2 to find another 0-cost card that just has the right elements. You're in the casino.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, talking about that innate, it is one of those that is basically just like 3 different powers in one. It is just kind of an economic way of doing what is essentially 3 basically different things with kind of wildly different threshold requirements. And I talked about a little bit with the low complexity spirits, how some of those I don't particularly love. Like, it doesn't feel super flavorful to just tack on, like, if you have one of these, do this. If you have one of these, do this. If you have one of these, do... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not everyone's Starlight. But I will say, all of these effects are cool enough on their own and powerful enough and fun enough that I don't really care. I don't really care that it's like, one wants you 4 fire, 2 want you 3 fire, one wants you 1 leaf, 1 wants you 2 leaf. Like, I don't really care that it's a little bit of a mix and match, especially because it is still unified by wanting at least 3 fire.
It also feels like, well, its namesake, that you're transforming.
Yes.
You yourself are the one changing here.
Exactly.
And how you transform, it affects the land.
Mm-hmm.
So not only does this push you into fire minor powers, but this pushes you into, like, kind of, like, fire powers that were already kind of cool for you, but maybe you wouldn't pick them up. And so, Call to Ferocity, if there's a Dahan in that land, you get a fear and you push things. And this goes really well with your Dahan movement abilities, but it also has that sun and that earth. And so it lets you hit that 2nd and 3rd threshold more easily. Gold's Allure brings guys into your lands. You push them out, and now you bring them back. And it has, again, that earth, but also this animal. You're trying to find things that hit both of these different thresholds.
Yeah.
And something that we haven't mentioned, but Roiling Bog and Snagging Thorn is always a good card for Wildfire, but it has Isolate. And so now you don't have to push things out.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. Huh.
So you isolate your land, you destroy things, and then you, boom, do it again. And if you combo that with the absurd amount of Badlands that you can produce, because you're looking at a lot of cards. You're G2ing, so you're 4 cards, and then your partner is G2ing, or looking at powers, and then your Exaltation to look at 8 more powers. The odds of you finding something like a Hazard Spread, Sear, Anger into the Wildlands, or any of the other 6 cards that add Badlands, you're making Badlands like crazy. And so if you can keep them here, you can now just blow them up like it's a hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I do like especially is, and I found myself doing this really just for this, is that first part, it lets you, if you do this, if you forget a power card and to gain a power card, you get 1 of any element, and that element can help you hit other sections of this. If you go for either a plant or an earth, then you're only 1 element, 1 of those away from the second part of this. Or you go for a sun, right? You say, forget it. Like, I'm not gonna draft any cards with sun. I don't need that for anything else. But you just always do that first step, and then you get sun, and then boom, you can do that third one as long as you have an animal. And it's such an interesting proposition of just like, well, I didn't really need to draft a card, but all right, sure. Let me forget something to get a new card, to then basically just to get that element, and then maybe you'll get a good card along the way. And it does lead to these just really interesting propositions of like, do I want to do this? Should I do this? And then like the second step, you now have to pay 1 energy to replace the blight, to basically heal the blight.
Yep.
That's another thing too. It's like, that's another decision point of like, do I have the energy to do that?
Does my partner have the energy?
That's true too. Now, I will say one of the, I don't know if it's a negative thing, but this is one of those spirits or aspects or whatever that your teammate needs to know what this is and how to best play with it. Do not play this aspect with someone who doesn't really know. Yeah. Now, I will also say, even if you just play it for yourself, it still does good things. Like even if your your teammate doesn't get anything else out of this.
I play competitive Spirit Island. Don't worry about it.
Well, sometimes it feels like Heart of the Wildfire is playing against everyone else, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. And then lore-wise, what does this mean? You're never really healing the land because you're making it bad.
You're perhaps even making it worse in some aspects, right? It's bad for not just the spirits. Well, the spirits don't care about the Badlands necessarily. It's bad for all humans.
That's true.
It's bad for the Dahan. Also, they can no longer be here.
Here's a question too. This whole replace an explorer with a beast, right? From a flavor
think about
perspective.
Stop.
No. Hang on. There's two ways to
werewolves are confirmed.
One, we can say that the beasts are like eating the human, right? They're using that for sustenance that then they reproduce and make more beasts, whatever. Or we can say that the spirit is literally going around saying, "Nah, you're like a panther now. I don't know. You're a jaguar. You're a tiger. You're a magpie. I don't know."
I don't know why I didn't think about beasts eating them. That's like kind of smart, guy.
Wow. That's probably the canonical thing, right?
So I thought like werewolves. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
So what's the 2-cost major that turns a savage transformation? I was like, oh yeah, transforming, savage transformation. Clearly, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we're cooking the humans and making them nice and tasty.
Yeah, we're burning them, and that's food for more babies, because each year or each phase is like a dozen years, so it just takes more time. We got more food for the animals. There we go.
Yep. Now, are we literally turning towns into people? Are we like transmogrifying little huts or buildings into humans?
All of a town is, hundreds of people, and explorers aren't just one explorer. So we're just destroying all their buildings, and they're like, "Oh no, where do we go?"
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So if we destroy their city, they're just leaning up some extra like planks and saying, "All right, it's a
they've got their scaffolding up. They're like, "We're fine. This is fine.
Yeah, we're still okay." If you at home would like to hear more lore implications from us, please let us know. But yeah, transforming Wildfire. I do still feel like we could do a full episode on this someday. Because there is a lot to go into. Just how to play with it, what to do. But just to kind of keep it brief, I think it's really good. I didn't get enough chances to play with it to really say like, oh, I think it's better than base, but I think it's 100% more interesting than base Wildfire, and it kind of seemed more fun.
So I would choose to play transforming every single time between the two. If you have access to transforming, you haven't tried it yet, you gotta. Mm-hmm. Something that I want to say that I think is so cool about these elements is how it really emphasizes the importance of that fire. Is that first grass is on the top threshold, right? And so it's 4 fire and a grass. If you were to remove the grass from the second threshold, it's a 3-1-1 and a 1 sun and 1 animal. That means that you only need 1 of each of these things, and your top one gives you that any element. And so what it's asking you to do is make, fire on 2 cards, because you have 2 on your board, plus sun plant or earth plant or earth animal, basically plant and something, and the power will do the rest for you. And it shifts the cards that you're looking for just enough to be like, oh, this feels like Wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about it, is these cards should have been good, and they were just lacking just a little bit, and now they are good.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Okay, before we get to our final thoughts on this spirit in general, we do have a draft. We have an on-theme draft.
This is a game that I played earlier this week, and I thought this was a super cool draft. We're looking at...
Oh, man.
Yeah. Lure of the Unknown, Pact of the Joined Hunt, Hazard Spread, and Sky's Herald. We're playing on board D, and I don't remember the adversary.
You're Sweden 6.
Sweden 6? Oh, man. I spent some time on this because, in my mind, I'm looking at two of his best cards.
We're talking about, well, we're talking about maybe Lure and Skies, or are we talking about Hazards and Lure?
I like Hazards and Lure. You know, that energy is so tight. They're both perfect element, having all three of his primary elements.
Yeah.
And we talked about in this episode how cool those cards are for the spirit.
And it is worth noting it's still early on enough in the game that your disease is still there.
Yes, this is turn 2.
Yeah, you could use it to spread disease, because that's important. If you don't have... The spirit doesn't innately have any token-providing abilities other than transforming.
And the beast, but... Yeah.
It can't make a beast, can it?
Hazard Spread could make a beast.
Sorry. Yeah, I just meant that that Wildfire itself can't make any other elements at its base. So if the disease was gone, Hazard's only use would be beasts until you got something else.
Yep.
Potentially, because that would influence me. I think the disease, even if you may not actually go for it, that disease there helps.
Yes.
You know, it's an option. It's an option. Yeah, lore is fantastic. It's just anytime that your land with a blight is empty, you just yoink in a town, and that happens quite a lot. But Sky's Herald is also very useful as well. I think it's probably not the pick just because it's so early in this game. I think comparing it to the other two are 0-cost cards, and early on in Wildfire, I would much rather have that. Plus, you probably don't have any Destroyed Presence yet, so maybe you won't end up with Destroyed Presence. So, yeah, and then I'm not even considering Pact of the Joint Hunt.
Okay. So you're going to be so shocked. Because
Wait, hang on. I didn't say what I was going to pick. Hang on. Oh man, was that a fake out or not? I don't know. I think Pack of the Joint Hunt could have its uses, because you can push the hunt around, so you can get, an easy maybe 2 damage somewhere where you're not, which is nice. Oh no, sorry, it actually has to be one of your lands, so never mind. Forget Pact of the Joint Hunt. Get out of here. Yeah, I think Lore. I think I'd go Lore in this situation, but Hazards is a close second, and I think if it were later in the game, Sky's Herald maybe.
I would have taken Lure most of the time. But I stared at this board, and Pact of the Joined Hunt deals with this board right now. And I took it. Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened was I grew into the land 4, and I placed my second fire showing, placed the Blight, and I Firestormed there, making it so that was, more or less dealt with. And I played Pack of the Joined Hunt, which has that plant, allowing me to Firestorm without any other cards. Mm-hmm. And then I pulled in a third Dahan, and I dealt with land 7 with the Dahan. Yeah. It was just one of these plays that worked right now, and yeah, that allowed me to cascade the nearly cleared board into a victory.
Wow. All right, fantastic.
It was very, very cool pick.
Interesting draft. Yeah, nice. If you would like to submit a draft, please join our Discord server, link in the description, and you can submit your own draft, and we will maybe talk about it on the show. Also, if you want to see a visual aid of this draft, you can see it probably on the Discord server, and definitely on the YouTube version of this episode. So, to sum it all up, what's our kind of final feelings on Wildfire?
Wildfire is one of my favorite spirits, but that's because it made me bang my head on the wall in how frustratingly difficult it was to do well. I don't think I would recommend this to most people, but I fell in love.
I think if the digital version did not exist, I would hate this spirit by the end of this, because if I had to just set up the game every single time I lost, and I played as many games as I ended up playing, I would not be happy. But thankfully, the digital version does exist, and it's helpful in situations like this, especially just for getting practice with this sort of spirit, because this is a spirit. As I said, like, I just don't think you could never drop this in someone's lap that is kind of new to the game and has never seen this spirit before and expect them to thrive. They're going to end up placing Blight all over the board. They're going to end up not having anything in their lands with Blight that they can really do much for. It's a very, very easy spirit to make mistakes on. It has a decently high ceiling if you know what you're doing, but it's hard. It's very, very hard. So this is the first spirit in the episodes we've done that I have a lower opinion of it now than I did when we kind of first started, when I first started playing this thing. That's not to say I hate it or I think that it's a bad spirit, but I think that it's not a spirit I want to be playing a ton of the time. Every so often I think it'd be fun, but it is not really a spirit for me personally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Heart of the Wildfire can kick you while you're down and make you have some bad feelings as you're like, the purpose is to heal the land, and the spirit just won't let me do that.
Yeah. Oh, good. My turn would be better if I didn't play any cards. That feels super great.
Great. It would be wonderful if I reclaimed and did nothing.
If I had done one more damage here, then I could have done this, but I didn't do that, so I can't. Like, it's just it leads to those situations a lot. But yes. if you learn this spirit really well, there are people that have, certainly. If you look at guides, if you really kind of go deep into this spirit, which I didn't do. I didn't look at any guides. I'm sure it could be a very rewarding experience, and I think you said it to me off air, just that, like, you can very easily at difficulty 0 just like win.
Yeah.
1 or 2.
Yeah, there's a song and dance to the spirit that I really like doing. I like playing on the knife's edge.
Yeah, every spirit has its own little mini game, and this one is certainly a very tight balance of resources.
So,
yeah,
what are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to do something a little bit fun, and that doesn't require me to play, like, 100 games of a spirit I'm not crazy about. We are going to be doing an adversary rule tier list with a little bit of a twist. What we're going to be doing is looking at each adversary rule in isolation, like pretending like the previous rules don't exist. We're going to look at it like independent of the escalation, independent of the loss condition. We're just looking at it as, if you were to play the game with this rule of text, how much more difficult do you think the game would be? We're going to do a tier list about it. It's going to be really interesting and hopefully spark some good conversations about difficulty in the game and kind of what effects we find harder and easier and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I think it'll be a lot of fun.
The only thing I'm curious about is this tier list a difficulty tier list or a fun to play against tier list?
Oh, I think difficulty.
Difficulty?
You want to do fun?
You know, sometimes I look at England level 1 and I go, this would be really miserable to play against. But it's also very difficult, so maybe it's the same.
We could definitely have that conversation next episode.
I look forward to it.
If you want to play along, I will be posting a link to the tier list generator thing in the Discord server. So please join the Discord server if you want to be a part of the community. And if you do fill out the tier list, please send it our way and maybe we'll mention it next time. This has been a spirited discussion.
Bye-bye.